Hello again, I'm Doug Smith, and welcome to the 21 September 2018 edition of Portsmouth This Week, the voice of Portsmouth, Rhode Island. Our special guests today are Sara Churgin and Lauren Carson. Sara is the district manager of the Eastern Rhode Island Conservation District, as well as the project coordinator for the Rhode Island State Conservation Committee. Lauren is on the leadership team with Sara for the Rhode Island Green Infrastructure Coalition and works with her on Aquidneck Island. Lauren is also the state rep for Newport. So welcome to both of you guys. I appreciate you taking your time to come down and join us. Before we get into the organizations, which I thought was a little bit complex, but I'm sure you can make it simple for us, I wonder if we could talk about your backgrounds, maybe starting with you, Sara.
Okay. So I was born in New Jersey. I lived there until I went to college, and I went to college in Chicago, Northwestern. Okay. Went to law school in San Francisco, practiced law for a while. Didn't like that much, and met my husband in 1999 and moved out here, back to Rhode Island, and worked as a lawyer for a little bit, had 3 wonderful children, and then started looking for a part-time job and found something that interested me, which is in the environment, which had nothing to do with my legal background, but was just, I'm environmentally sound just at home. They were looking for somebody to help them with the financial and legal aspects of it, and that was the Eastern Rhode Island Conservation District and the State Committee. And I've been doing it for 3 years, and then by chance I was reading an article in the Projo, an editorial that Lauren had written, which caught my eye, and I called her up and said I wanted to talk to her about it, and then she introduced me to the Rhode Island Green Infrastructure Coalition, which Eastern is now a member of.
Yeah. Okay, and we'll get into that in a second. This is a fascinating story. And we also just found out that you're my almost next door neighbor.
Yes, exactly.
in my neighborhood. Lauren, what about you? Could you give us a little bit of your background?
Sure. My name is Lauren Carson, and I currently live in Newport. I've lived on Aquidneck Island for just about 33 years, 8 of them actually right here in Portsmouth. My son is a graduate of Portsmouth Abbey. And I was also born in New Jersey and moved here in about 1985. I have a master's in business and a master's in history. And as a young woman, I worked in the environmental community when I was living in New Jersey. And then when I first came to Aquidneck Island, I was self-employed for about 25 years. And about 10 years ago, I sold my business and wanted to get back into public policy. And I returned to work for Clean Water Action, whom I had worked for on the national staff about 35 years ago. And so I've been doing that since maybe about the last 6 or 7 years. And Clean Water Action is a founding member of the Rhode Island Green Infrastructure Coalition, which we began about 4 years ago.
Okay, now is Clean Water Action a national organization?
Yes, it is. We're a national organization. We have about 8,000 members on Aquidneck Island.
Wow. And
we have members in about 13 or 14 other states. We've been in existence since about 1972. We first became organized and established ourselves around the initial passage of the Clean Water Act in 1972.
Wow. So actually, I think you both have fascinating backgrounds that are perfect for what you're doing now, too.
Oh, thank you.
You know, especially law background has got to help.
Oh, no, it absolutely
with
helps.
Yeah.
It helps a lot.
Okay, let's talk about your organization. So like I say, it's the names. There's so many names that I think are confusing, but let's talk about the overarching thing here, I think, the Green Infrastructure Coalition. Mm-hmm. Can you tell us a little bit about that and how your own organization has gotten involved in this and how it came about that this coalition exists?
Well, you can talk more to how the coalition...
The environmental community in Rhode Island has a history of building issue-based coalitions. We had one for water security in the early 2000s. We had one around sustainable transportation 5 years ago. And the funding community that supports the environmental community is very interested in seeing us work together. And so they encourage us to choose the same issues that we can work on, like water security or transportation. And then we moved on to green infrastructure. And through the leadership of the Rhode Island Foundation that funded us initially 4 years ago, organizations like Clean Water Action, like our other members include a variety of partners in the Greater Providence area, the Woonasquatucket River Waters Council, the Nature Conservancy, Save the Bay. We all began building a program, a shared program, around green infrastructure. And so we've been working exclusively in the Greater Providence area as well as on Aquidneck Island. And over the years, we have recruited a wide variety of organizations to join us, which include municipalities, the private sector, landscape designers, engineering firms, the City of Newport, the City of Pawtucket, the City of Providence. And the leadership group that you spoke of earlier is about 6 organizations. Sara and I sit there, and we lead the entire organization on issues of strategy, policy, and planning for the organization, as well as long-term funding.
Now, is the town of Portsmouth a member of this? or-
No, they're not, actually.
We should be.
You should be.
We'll have to talk to the
Agreed.
right people.
It's very
and see
easy.
what
You
we
just
can do.
sign on because you support green infrastructure, and
Yeah.
there's no dues.
Yeah.
And we our members get our newsletters. They can participate in meetings, and it's really a broad network sharing of information and initiatives around green infrastructure.
Okay, well, let me work on that a little bit. I can see what I can do.
That'd be great.
Chuck Alott and the Aquidneck Land Trust, I presume, are
Absolutely.
members?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
And Clean Ocean Access. So Clean Ocean Access, Clean Water Action, Eastern, and the Land Trust, we all work on Aquidneck
We're
Island.
the partners here on Aquidneck Island.
Okay, and so what kind of projects do you get involved in? I mean, and we'll talk about a specific one you guys did at Common Fence Point in a few minutes, but what are you looking for when when a project comes up? I mean, do you propose things to people, or do people come to you and say, I need a way to handle this runoff or something?
Both. You want to take that one, Sara?
Yes, exactly as Lauren says, both. We presently have a grant from the Van Buren Charitable Foundation, and part of it is doing residential rain gardens, and also part of it was a rain barrel giveaway. So we gave away 50 rain barrels, which was hugely successful. ALT and Clean Ocean Access had worked in partnership. They were giving away rain barrels. It was in the spring, and we had 25 rain barrels to give as well, and it was done at Easton's Beach, and we had a waiting list. Once all the rain barrels were given, there were still people standing online.
Okay, and these are the barrels that take your downspout rainwater
Exactly.
from your roofs,
Right.
and then you can use it for irrigation or whatever you want later on.
Exactly. You can use it for watering, for it collects the runoff.
We had one of those, and the problem was we got so much rain, it just kept over, it was to capacity the whole time.
Well,
You
they
couldn't
have
use
some
it
where you
fast
can
enough.
close it, so then it just doesn't fill
Okay,
it
so you can
anymore.
close off the intake. And,
Right,
yeah.
exactly. So that was one of the programs that we did. Another is that we are working with Melville Elementary School, which is where my son just left and is now a 5th grader at the middle school. But last year we went back over there, and they had a huge stormwater runoff problem in their backyard. They actually had to move their playground further up because when it was raining, it was complete mud and the kids couldn't go outside, couldn't play. So we are now raising money for, we have given some of the money from the Van Buren Foundation to start a rain garden. It turned into a enormous project that we're doing now called the Outdoor Learning Activity Zone. So it is going to be an area that is an enormous rain garden that's going to be used by the teachers for education for the kids, and at the same time it is going to help with stormwater runoff for the backyard of Melville.
Yeah. Well, that sounds like it'd be a lot of benefit to the kids.
Yes, and the community.
Do you do educational things too, or do you go into the schools or talk about any of this?
Yes. Well, COA has a program where they go in and they talk about outreach. They do outreach to the schools and talk about stormwater runoff. So does ALT. We do a lot of workshops, one of which we're going to be doing on October 13th at the Common Fence Point Community House,
Okay.
which will talk about this particular project that we're talking about today.
Okay.
But we'll talk about stormwater in general.
The
Okay.
work that Clean Ocean Access does in the schools, that's their contribution to the coalition effort, is really connecting stormwater with water quality. And that's where the science comes in. I mean, we have some tremendous problems with water quality on this island. We have all surface water. We have a lot of runoff. And so there's really a connection that can be made for the students in schools so that they can understand drinking water, they can understand the impact pollution has on drinking water, they can measure it, and hopefully we'll encourage them to become active in the environmental community or work as professionals in the community for clean drinking water.
Yeah, I think the awareness part is probably the key because
It's
everybody
huge.
takes everything for granted.
Correct.
Clean drinking water, et cetera. It doesn't work like that.
Well,
That's
we've
right.
also done 2 workshops in Newport. We've done a couple in Portsmouth, and we've done 2 in Middletown. And part of the residential workshop was that we did a survey that we wrote and sent out to about 8,000 people on the island and got 70 responses so that for people to be able to apply to get a rain garden in their
Okay.
yard.
That was one of my questions, how you...
Yeah, so that's how we did it, and we had specific questions asking them about what the stormwater runoff is. Well, first of all, do you know what stormwater runoff is? Do you have flooding in your yard? Do you have any idea where the rainwater goes when it goes down your driveway, down the street? Where does it go? Are you affected by beach closures? Because all of this is tied into stormwater runoff.
Well, I know there's several neighborhoods in Portsmouth that the drains, the steep drains in the street get clogged up with stuff. And I think it's important that people, if they have one in front of their house, try to make sure it stays clean, stays open, so the stuff can run off.
Right. Well, some people don't realize they feel they're doing the right thing by, if there's some people who are sweeping and then they'll sweep into the drains. And
rather
that's
than
not a
getting...
good thing.
Yeah. Okay.
There are efforts around the country in communities where there are neighborhoods that actually clean the storm drains. We've not taken that particular tack with our work, but there's a variety of efforts around the country in neighborhoods to manage stormwater, and that's a really successful program. I saw someone in my neighborhood just doing that the other day also.
Yeah.
And
Really?
I thought to myself, gee, do you know where that goes? Do you know
they're
what
just
happens?
shoving it into the
Right.
drain.
Yes.
Well, they
Rather
think they're
than-
cleaning the street,
They
you
think
know,
they do.
so, and they're not realizing that it's the same thing with when people walk their dogs, how important it is that they bag the poop up. Or people who, it's absolutely beautiful to walk around the reservoirs, but if the dogs poop and then it rains, it goes into, and that's our drinking water. So
Yeah.
it's important, as
Well,
you
I'll
said.
tell you, and particularly right now, those folks down in North Carolina that are speaking of water problems, I mean,
Tremendous.
and it's not just water, it's disease, it's
Correct.
filth, it's germs, it's all kind of stuff down there. So you have to feel for those folks. Hopefully, this year at least, we're not going to have one of those come up this way. At least I hope.
Can't take drinking water for granted.
No, you can't.
No.
Absolutely not. I got to say though, our public works department is pretty good at keeping those things up and running. When it comes to doing these things, let's talk about the funding part of this thing and how that works. I mean, I know grants. Every nonprofit, the Historical Society as well, is highly dependent on grant funding to do projects, to do any kind of major projects. How does it work with you guys? I mean, do you have donors that are into the environmental issues, particularly, and
It's a mix of things. There is a tradition of both Rhode Island Foundation and Van Buren to fund environmental activities and to fund development, and to fund planning, and to fund sound kinds of environmental responses to what's going on in the community. But in the work that we do on these projects, there's also a lot of public funding. The state spends a lot of money on stormwater management. We spoke earlier about the Department of Transportation, who's obligated to do stronger stormwater management. The EPA spends a lot of money on stormwater management, and they do fund activities where communities are actually taking charge of their stormwater and doing things about it. So, and in other cases, municipalities receive money to manage stormwater. And so in that case, we can work with municipalities. We really want to get the message out that green infrastructure works. It's attractive, it creates a park-like environment, and it does really clean stormwater before it runs. And so we scan a globe for both public and private money, and we even have some engineering companies that are starting to support our work. Because the more we advocate for green infrastructure,
Sure.
really the more work there is
Better
for engineering
business for
companies.
them.
It's a good business environment. It beats paving stuff, you know. So, so we keep our eye open for a variety of projects. We keep our eye open for a variety of funding opportunities.
Yeah.
And we keep moving forward.
I would think that would be a major function of you guys, is trying to put the project together with the funding to do it.
We're moving into project management more than advocacy, actually, on it.
Yeah,
That's what's
because
taken us there, yeah.
I'm thinking almost everybody understands some of these environmental issues much more than they did in the past. And it's a constant education. You start in schools, like you're doing now. But in the case of the one down at Common Fence Point that you recently did, can you tell me, how did that come about? You know, how did that start?
Lauren and I were actually meeting with Elizabeth Lynn from the Van Buren Charitable Foundation, just sort of to give an update as to what we were doing. And she told me about the fact that they were doing renovations at Common Fence Point. And she said, oh, I wonder if there would be a spot there for a rain garden. And so she gave me Conley Zanni's contact information, who's like the unpaid, unsung hero
Absolutely.
at the community center house. And I got in touch with her and then went over to look at the project, met with the architect, and tried to figure out if there was something that we could do. So they're working on the interior of the building. So there was a big spot in the front that wasn't going to be touched at all by renovations. And we decided, okay, this would be a good spot. Now, we had a template that had been put together by an architect, an engineer who works for Pearcorp. It's an engineering firm that's in Boston and in Providence, and his name is Mark Weller. And he put a template for us that we were going to use for our residential rain gardens. Now, that was 10 by 10.
Yeah.
This rain garden was almost 800 square feet that we did. So we took that template and expanded it quite a bit, and then worked in partnership with NUIA, which is New England Water Environmental Association, and they had a bunch of volunteers who were going to be in Newport on June 2nd. So we had a date that we had to do it. That was the date we were going to have to do it. So we were working on the plans, and Conley got a whole bunch of people who were supportive in the Common Fence Point arena. Everybody on Aquidneck Island who's involved in the green infrastructure was on board for it. And then we got a list of materials that we needed because the only thing we had to pay for was materials. Everybody was going to donate their labor. And Lauren and I spent a day, and we rented a U-Haul truck, and we went to a nursery in Westerly and got all of the plants that we needed in the soil and rocks and everything, and brought it for the following day, prayed for no rain, and had an amazing turnout. We had about 40 volunteers who showed up. Sunshine, incredible, and it was all done in one day.
Yeah.
It was a tremendous cooperative effort that just happened to pull together in literally like 2 weeks' time, from the time Elizabeth made the suggestion to when it was shovels in the ground.
Yeah, well, that short time constraint was one of the things. We went down there last week, I think it was, and did a short video with Connolly happened to be there, and we used her as kind of the narrator. So why don't we take a look at that now, and then we'll come back and talk about some other things. Why don't we show that video? Okay, here we are at Common Fence Point Community Center with Conley Zanni. Conley, what's your actual title here?
I am the president of this community organization.
Okay,
Thank
because
you.
she's also the driving force behind all of this stuff. And right behind us, we got this beautiful little garden here. I wonder if you could talk about how it came about, what it's supposed to do, and
Yeah.
stuff
Well,
like that.
it was very amazing and very serendipitous. I got a call one day from Sara saying, I'm from the Eastern Rhode Island Conservation District and I would like to talk to you about putting in a rain garden. We got an investment from the Van Buren Charitable Trust, and that's part of our mission now, to educate people and help people install rain gardens, and we needed to do that. The interesting thing was, we weren't going to do it until our renovations of this building behind me are complete. But she's like, we got to do it in the next 2 weeks.
Yeah, wow.
I know, right? I was just like, you
Yeah.
got to be kidding me, really? So, you go with the flow, and she's like, we need volunteers. And that is one thing I feel like that I can do. So I was like, okay, volunteers, 2 weeks time, right? So we blasted it out in our newsletter and said, we've got this cool way for everybody in this community to come and participate. And we had about 50 people show up that day.
Wow, that's great.
And it was a great day. We pre-excavated with the help of Dan Woods from Woods Septic and got the infrastructure ready to go, and then all of these volunteers came out with wheelbarrows and shovels and beautiful plants, and we made this happen.
Yeah.
It was like the community coming together.
Now, how long did it take? One day? Or?
It was one day.
You're kidding.
We did it in one day.
Holy man.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, that's great.
Yeah. No, we're really proud of it.
Okay, I wonder if you could tell us, the gardens behind us here. I wonder if you could explain what this all is meant to do.
Well, my understanding is that a rain garden is meant to catch stormwater runoff. So we want to take everything that hits the roof of that building and funnel it into this garden so that it doesn't end up in the street, right? So we've, there's a specific depth it has to be based on the type of soil we've got. We've got water absorptive plants, and we've got it all designed so you can see it comes off the roof, down the gutters, under the ground here, and out into the rain garden. So it's
cool.
it's all the new rage. Everybody needs a rain garden, evidently.
Yeah, and this keeps it out of the bay and everything else, so it's a good thing. Yeah. It also looks nice, very nice.
It does. I think this was a very
It's hard to believe you got it done in one day, though. That's very impressive.
I know. It is very symbolic for this community.
Well, I think it says a lot for the community, too, about how they can pull together and do this kind of stuff.
That's what this community's all about.
You got it.
We're doing this.
I just want to mention, you got a great sign over here.
I would love to show off this sign. I feel like this sign makes us look like we're a national park or Nature is at work here. And it's so awesome. Like we're in the big leagues now. This is pro.
Yeah.
So all sorts of good things happening at Common Fence Point.
That's really great. I'm very proud of you guys doing all this
thank
stuff.
you. We're so grateful. We're so grateful to the Van Buren Foundation, to the Rhode Island Eastern Conservation District, and all of these partnerships that are coming together to make this happen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's good all around for everybody, I think.
Yeah.
Okay,
That's the
Conley,
idea.
thanks very much. Kate.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, so we made that video on the 7th of September, and Conley Zaney is my hero and all this stuff. It's, the lady's unbelievable, and she's so enthusiastic about everything that it's contagious. But let's talk a little bit more. Lauren, you were going to say something about the.
Yeah, I was going to comment that one thing that we always ensure that we do is to leave a sign behind at any of our installations. And they're uniform signs throughout the state, actually. We had them designed centrally, and the Department of Transportation is paying for them. They've been generous enough to support the signs. And we have a sign there at Common Fence Point. We have a sign down at the Gateway Center in Newport. We're really trying to build an awareness about this whole program. So for folks that go over to see the site, they should go take a look at the sign.
Yeah. Do you have any new projects coming up, and the other thing is, they're going to do a lot of work in that building, I guess. Is there any thought of doing anything else around Common Fence Point, or is that one runoff?
One thing I wanted to mention about the big thing, and this is with all of our green infrastructure projects, is that maintenance of these projects is key to them working properly.
Okay.
So the incredible thing about the Common Fence Point neighborhood is they are so involved.
Absolutely.
I mean, they were there like that when Conley said we need volunteers, and they're the ones who are going to maintain it. I mean, they're the ones who are going to prune it. They're the ones who are going to water it, which they have been. They did it all summer, and so that is key to these projects working. You can't just like put the project in the ground and then
Yeah.
think, okay, it's gonna.
And I would think that'd be a really good thing for you to know as you're going forward.
Yes.
Because you don't have
Absolutely.
to educate anybody any further, they already know. But again, I think that's the hallmark of Common Fence Point as a community.
Yes.
They
Yes,
work
it is.
together, which I think is fantastic.
Right.
Anything else going on Aquidneck Island like that you're looking at?
Well, the other part is that we're going to be doing the other residential rain gardens. So we will be putting in about 8 rain gardens around the island for homes that we've selected
Okay.
that need that sort of stormwater mitigation.
Okay, now, how can people propose or request something like this from you guys?
Well, unfortunately, the funding for this one is done, but the hope is that we'll find funding in the future to be able to
Yeah.
continue. I mean, we can always help and give technical advice to people, but insofar as paying for it at the moment, that's not going to be.
Now, what is the criteria you'd look at for somebody wanting to have one of these?
We actually developed a list of 10 points for the homes that we were going to choose for the installations, which include the requirement of putting up the sign. It included that the size of the rain garden, 10 by 10, technically fit the amount of water that was on their property. We asked them to display the sign. We asked them to maintain the site. We would train them how to maintain the site, because you can't just put the plants in and
Right,
then let them grow.
exactly,
So
yeah.
we said, we'll come and train. We don't want them to say, look, it's flooded now, So there was 10 points that we had developed that we made clear to all the homeowners that we interviewed, so that they would understand that we were developing a partnership with them so that it would be maintained, it would work properly, and yet there would be public education about the site and the way it worked.
Okay, and is there a way people could contact you for consideration later on down the road when funding might come available or anything?
Certainly.
You guys have workshops and things anyway. I think that's
Yeah, we
one of the ways
publicize
the
them,
public.
yes, we publicize them. Well, there's one October 13th
Yeah.
at Common Fence Point at 10:30 in the morning. That's open to the public.
Yeah, and if you could send me some information on that, if we have a program around that time, we can certainly
Oh, okay,
help
certainly.
advertise it,
Sure.
say something anyway. Yeah, this thing I was quite impressed with the size and the complexity. It looked like, obviously a lot of thought had gone into somebody
It's highly
doing this.
technical. And we were fortunate
Yeah.
enough to have the support of, engineers and
Yeah.
technical people.
And it's unfortunate, but I think Common Fence Point is almost a unique community here in Portsmouth. Even up where we live, we're not all together
I
like
know.
Common Fence Point
And I
is.
actually think that our neighborhood would be a great area for it, because so much of the stuff our yards run down, and so if people had things put in, because if you're above, that means all the people below you are getting your stormwater runoff. So
Yeah.
the people who are on that bottom street, they're getting all that stormwater runoff, and
Yeah.
it would be a great area for it.
Yeah, I think the Common Fence Point is unique in many ways, but one of the ways is that the people bought and built that center.
Right, exactly.
And I think is exactly what it is. It's a center where everybody comes in and does their own thing and participates and stuff, and I think it's a great attraction for people living there. It's just difficult to try to transfer that to another.
Right.
But we still got possibilities here. How can people contact you if they want more information or if they want to support you or?
Well, I believe that our emails are going to be provided or
Yeah.
have been provided.
Yeah.
So if they email either one of us, we're able to respond
them
to
in.
them and get information. And they can also look at the Rhode Island Green Infrastructure Coalition website.
Okay.
And there's contact
Now,
information on there.
the organizations themselves, are you open to any kind of new membership, or if people would like to be a part of what you're doing?
Always,
So, okay,
always open.
okay, great. Well, listen, we're just about out of time, but I'd like to thank you both for coming in today. And
Thank you for having
Thank
us.
Fascinating
you very
stuff.
much.
Keep doing it. And
Thank you.
if we can help on this program in any way, let us know.
Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much.
Thanks very much. And thank you for joining us. See you next time on Portsmouth This Week.